We'll go into a little bit more detail about creating fields within ABBYY FlexiCapture document definitions. We'll talk about the different types of those fields, basic field recognition properties. There's a lot of common properties. And we'll talk also about the data form view. That's the view that the verification operator sees and works in. We have different types of fields. We've got recognition fields. Those are the fields that we actually get data from with OCR or ICR. We've got service fields. They collect data such as, scan date or recognition time or the name of the field as it was placed in the hot folder. There's a lot of different types of data that you can get with service fields, and it eliminates or reduces your need to program to get at some of that deep data, processing data. Then there's also fields without regions. So fields without regions are all about variables. So if I'm collecting a date of birth by selecting a month field and a day field and a year field, and I want to combine them into a complete date field, I'll create a field without region and I'll create a merge rule to move that data into the, say, date of birth field. Same thing with if I've got a first name field and a last name field and I want a full name field, I'll create a field without region to hold that data and again a merge rule. Or maybe I'm doing a database lookup and I want to do a reverse database lookup. Say I match a company name and I want to bring in the company number that only exists in my database. I'm going to create a field without region to hold on to that company number. You can group fields, and also if you want to make sure that you're not recognizing data from a specific region on your form, you can use the non-recognized region feature. So with fixed forms, it's a pretty easy thing to just rubber band the data that you want to collect. For fixed forms, you really should be starting with blank data because frankly, what can happen is if you're in a situation like this, FlexiCapture might read this H or this A, the R, the P line, the E line, the R line. It may read those lines as constrained print box dividers. So it's best to indicate an area without any characters so it doesn't accidentally see this E as a separator line. For semi-structured documents, it's not a best practice to start with an empty form. For structured documents, it's a best practice to start with a fixed form. Just a quick summary of some of the different types of fields we can capture. Check marks and checkmark groups. And a little more detail about fields without region. So as I mentioned earlier, if I've got a full name field, I've got a first name and a last name on my form, I can create a field without region called full name and merge this data onto my form. And then I probably would not export this field or this field, but rather I would just export the full name field. Service fields link to a lot of interesting information like how long it took to recognize or what time did the image come in for recognition, at what time did it get exported, and so forth. So normally you'd think you might have to write some code to get at that data. So when you create a service field, you've got a drop list and you can select from that drop list a lot of different important information that can get linked to a field that gets exported very easily without programming. Grouping, it's an aesthetic thing. Mostly you can group fields together so your verification operator can collapse or expand a group and go in and verify data there. Field data can continue over page breaks. That's very common for multi-page documents. It's something that we've built into the product. And, fields can have several instances. So if I've got a fixed form or a semi-structured form, we've got the ability, say like we've got different child field names, we can pull that data in as table data, essentially as line item data. So we've got real flexibility with this kind of repeating data. Let's talk briefly about field recognition. With ABBYY FlexiCapture, we provide ABBYY's OCR engine and ABBYY's ICR engine for machine print and handprint data collection. But if you think you've got a better engine for a specific use case, we're open. We'll allow you to access that external OCR engine via script, and we just don't want to lock you out of that kind of choice. So we talked a little bit about the document definition, how it contains fields for recognizing the document, and you can add additional fields such as service fields or fields without region. when you are dealing with semi-structured or unstructured documents, you need to build a layout that will understand where the data is that you're focused on. You bring in that data, and then you set up your document definitions, exports, and format checks just as you would with a fixed form. So the difference between processing a fixed and a semi-structured form is, for semi-structured, there's an extra step where you need to create a layout so that you can intelligently go after the data that you're focused on. Fixed forms, they're much more straightforward. You stay in the document definition editor, you rubber band the zones that you want to capture, and then you set up your format checks and whatnot and your exports. So fields, line items can be multi-page. They can span page gaps, and that's really an important feature.